first published dictionary in America is the Noah Webster's Dictionary of 1828 describes the original inhabitants of America as American, adjective pertaining to America. American, noun a native of America, originally applied to the aboriginals, or copper-colored races, found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. An Indian sold as a Negro. A rare case. The following is an account of the trial which recently come off in Colombia and by which a girl, Lut-se, was freed from servitude, being proved an Indian. We copy from the Southern Patriot. Columbia, South Carolina. October, 1854. Edgefield, South Carolina, Thursday, November 2, 1854 newspapers. Mr. Editor. Having nothing to do, and much inclined to be idle, owing to indisposition, I trust it may not be amiss to you or your kind readers, to give, as near as possible, a statement of the case which excited most interest at the late court. Judge Whitner, the distinguished jurist, presiding. Some 14 years ago, a Mr. Darby, of Chester District, purchased a girl called Lut-se, who was carried to that neighborhood by a man named Thompson, said to have been seen in Washington, D.C. as late as 1851, practicing law. The girl had the looks of an Indian, but was sold to him as a Negro. She ran away repeatedly, telling her playmates she was an Indian. Some 3 or 4 years ago, she was lodged in jail in Columbia as a runaway, and advertised. Her owner came for her and was required to show his bill of sale, which was not considered altogether satisfactory. Several citizens were impressed by the girl's appearance, and advised the jailer not to give her up, as she evidently was an Indian. He applied to Governor Means for advice, and the governor directed him to stand a suit, and let the case be decided by an appeal to evidence. Governor Manning also, upon coming into office, expressed an interest in the trial, as one involving important rights to the girl. After long delays by the party claiming her, to procure evidence, the case was tried at the late term. Some 3 years since, an old Cherokee chief visited Columbia. Upon hearing that an Indian girl was in jail, he said that 14 years ago, while his tribe was on their way from North Carolina to Arkansas, an Indian girl about 4 years old was stolen from his party, that great distress was caused to her parents, that she was the child of his sister's daughter, and that her name was Lut-se, that he came to Columbia with the hope of seeing Lut-se, and that as soon as he laid eyes on her his heart was rejoiced to see the 5 of his sister's daughter, that this girl is Lut-se, and she is as much like her mother as her mother's sister's children are like her mother's sister. The chief's name is Ineluski. The old man removed 8 years ago from Arkansas, and now lives in North Carolina. He was a captain under General Jackson, as the Battle of the Horseshoe Bend, where he commanded 130 warriors, and fought with much distinction. Commissions were read from several chiefs of tribes now in North Carolina, stating that a girl named Lut-se was stolen from one of their party about 14 years ago. A commission was read of the examination of a Mrs. Carter, the wife of a man who purchased the girl from Thompson and sold her to Darby. In this she stated that, learning from her children that the girl said she was Indian, she called her up and questioned her about it, when she said, no, she was not Indian, but her mother was Negro. This was offered as evidence, and, strange to say, admitted. But it had the opposite effect of what was intended. As it was clear that among her playmates the girl told the truth, and to her master or mistress she evidently had been taught to say otherwise. Evidence was brought forward that she had, for 14 years, been in Chester, in possession of Darby, working as a Negro, and so considered, although called Darby's Indian. The most striking testimony adduced in the case, was that by our distinguished, talented and scientist townsman, Dr. R. D. Gibbs. This is not only mine, but the opinion of others. He understands the anatomy of our races as well as I know my multiplication table. As proof of my declaration, he was put upon the stand and called upon to explain the ethnological distinction of races. He was asked to point out the characteristics of the Indian and Negro, which he did very minutely and fully, and in a manner to bring conviction to the whole assembled crowd. He exhibited a cast of an Indian skull of an aboriginal, said to be from one in the Academy of Science in Philadelphia, from a mound in Ohio. He explained all its characteristics, and then called up the old chief and interpreter and showed the identity with their heads. He then compared it and their heads with that of Lut-se, and established them all as of the same type. He then handled a Negro skull, and demonstrated clearly the peculiarities, and showed by comparison the marked difference between them. He explained the prominent differences in the anatomical structure of different parts of the body, and gave an exceedingly interesting account of the distinction in the hair of the Caucasian, Indian and Negro race. He stated a very curious fact, as resulting from microscopical observation, that in the mulatto cross the hair of one or the other parent was present, and sometimes hairs of both, but never a mongrel hair, that no amalgamated hair existed, that is often the mulatto had straight hair as kinky. He stated the microscope revealed that the hair of the white race was, when transversely divided, oval, that of the Indian circular, and that of the Negro eccentrically elliptical, with flattened edges, that the hair of the Negro was not hair, but wool, and capable of being faled, that the coloring matter of true hair was in an internal tube, while in the Negro it was in the epidermis or icales covering the shaft of the hair. In corroboration of his statement that both white and Negro hair were sometimes found in the same head, a singular case was mentioned in my hearing, by Dr. W. He stated that he once attended a half-breed Indian and Negro, who had straight Indian hair. He was ill, and had his head shaved and blistered. On his recovery, when his hair grew out, it was Negro hair, crisped and wiry. These are very curious facts, and of much importance in the distinction of races. The counsel of the plaintiff proposed and insisted on Dr. Gibbs to give the facts as to the hair of grades of blood, but he said he had not examined by the microscope any, but the half-breeds. It is to be hoped that full investigation will be made of this subject, and the facts published. On the whole, the evidence set forth by Dr. Gibbs was extremely interesting, and developed some facts I never heard of before. There has been but one opinion expressed in relation to it. The jury decided in favor of the girl's being Indian, and she left Columbia next day, with the old chief, on her way to Arkansas, to her parents and friends. Governor Means was so convinced that the girl was Indian that he was heard to say that if the case was decided against her he would buy her and set her free. This feeling seemed to pervade the community, and it is more than probable that, had the case been decided against her, the citizens would have freed her. We are hooted at by abolitionists as enslaving men, but here is a case where our protection is given to one whom God did not make a slave. Those only whom he has set his stamp upon do we recognize as such. Is there any free state that annually makes provision for a remnant of the aborigines remaining there, as ours does? South Carolina regularly appropriates a sum of money for the support of the Catawbas in York District, where part of the tribe is still left. Your friend, J.C. Janney. Columbia, South Carolina. October, 1854.